That it would happen one day, that this game would be global. We couldn't see it in those days. We knew that baseball had reached into China, Japan, very little during the days of Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio. We knew a little about that, but basketball, we just couldn't really grasp that. And but he said one day you will see American kids playing in Europe and Asia and all over the world, and then those youngsters will come over here and they'll get scholarships to our universities, and they'll end up playing in the NBA. He also said this, and this is really interesting to me. Yes, the game was invented 1891 by Dr. Naismith in Springfield, Massachusetts. Then he later moved to Kansas, and that's where Coach McLennan became his student. Coach McLennan was not allowed to play on the basketball team because he was an African American, but Dr. Naismith took a lot of time with him. But it was interesting, some of the things that I learned. We did the movie Black Magic. Took us about 3 years to get that research, and we found that Dr. Erwin Henderson, originally from Alabama, later went to Harvard, got his PhD, and he learned basketball in 1904. Now, prior to that, basketball was dominated by the Jews, the Poles, the Germans, and Irish. Black kids did not play basketball. And Dr. Henderson went into the YMCA's in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York, to teach kids basketball, and that was a tough job. Wow. It was really tough, and I can relate to that because I went into Africa, Sierra Leone, West Africa, 1960, and that was tough trying to get kids to grasp basketball. It was a girls' game, you know.
Right.
That was the attitude. But that's when our kids started playing basketball, and in later years, Coach McLennan, he got us all involved in basketball. I guess there are only about 3 or 4 of us left out of that little group, and I'm the only one that's still active, involved in basketball. The others are retired, and a couple of them in pretty bad health. But he said that one day we would dominate the game, and then we would lose the game to international students and international basketball players. And the rationale he gave was this: when the game was dominated by the other 4 ethnic groups, Jews, the Poles, the Germans, Irish, that they were poor at that time, and as they moved up the ladder socioeconomically, they just drifted away from basketball. And I can see that now. I've been watching it ever since I was the first black coach in the South, University of South Carolina, and under Frank McGuire, and I started watching this, and I can see it. Alabama, at one time, I could come here, 15 scholarships. That's what we were allowed. I could give all 5 of them within a 50-mile radius of Montgomery, or a 50-mile radius of Mobile, or a 50-mile radius of Birmingham. No more. This state, in the last 4 or 5 years, has produced less than 10 what we call Division I basketball players. Wow. This year, there's only 1. Socioeconomically, as we moved up the ladder, our kids now have cars, they have TV and that, and they don't play basketball anymore. And I ask people, when the last time you passed a playground, you saw 25 or 30 kids out there playing basketball? You don't see it anymore, where at one time we were poor, and that's what we did. We played basketball. Now our kids got so many other options, and they have money. And This happened after the Civil Rights Movement. So now the game may drift to other ethnic groups. Which, I tell people about how Osama bin Laden affected basketball around the world, and that just they don't grasp that at all. But I was telling them about, okay, at one time there was a Russia, and then Russia took in, if you want to call it that, other countries around them. I think it's about somewhere between 12 and 15 countries. Then they became the USSR, just like the United States of America. They became the USSR, the Socialist Republic. And Then they made one mistake. Well, they made 2 or 3 mistakes. The big mistake they made, though, was when they tried to add Afghanistan to that little family. And here comes this wild, infamous Saudi Arabian, Osama bin Laden. He formed a group called the Mujahideen. Every team in the world, I don't care what kind of sport it is, would love to have one Mujahideen warrior. They don't mind dying. And they defeated the USSR up in those mountains in Afghanistan, and so they went broke. USSR just, the money started depleting, and they let those little countries go. Now those little countries are poor countries. They have 2 things to do. They play soccer and basketball. And we finally got our first one coming into this country, played with the Lakers. He took Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's place. Name is Diva Baladi. So he was one of the first, and then they started coming. Then here comes the other kid, the black-haired kid, Stabakovic, and they kept coming and coming, and you're gonna see more and more and more. At the Knicks last year, we did everything we could to get Ricky Rubio out of Spain, and his father finally decided, well, no. So he wouldn't let him come because he was drafted by Minneapolis. His father wanted him to play in a high market area like New York or LA. So we tried to negotiate, but kids there put more time into the game. Rubio's not unusual in that part of the world. He's been playing basketball since he's 14 years old, and as a professional. Mm-hmm. So in this country, we have rules. The rules in our education system is destroying the game too. You got kids moving up socioeconomically, and then you got these NCAA rules, and you got high school athletic rules where kids don't play 12 months a year. They don't go into gymnasium, because gymnasium is locked up after the tournaments in March. Right. And the high school coach, he's not allowed to coach them, so that they join an AAU group, which AAU group is not a teaching organization. They just highlight players who have some kind of visibility, right. But they don't teach little kids to play basketball. Not like they should, because they're not teachers. Some of them are bankers, bartenders, and undertakers. They're not real coaches. But in Europe and other parts of the world, they are really getting into teaching. See, we got some managing coaches. They have teaching coaches, and it's affecting the game tremendously. But what the NBA is doing, and the NBA, by the way, might be the purest organization in basketball in the USA. They're straight up. Everybody else is pretending, doing all kinds of things illegally. But NBA is straight across the board. And what they're doing now, they're moving heavier into Europe and Africa. What John McLennan predicted a long time ago, this would come. They just established an NBA Africa. It's the office opened up in Johannesburg, South Africa, about a month ago. Wow. And they're going to keep going and going and going. Similar to what baseball did. Baseball started opening up camps and schools down in the Dominican Republic and Venezuela and places years ago, because they saw this coming, right, that these kids not playing baseball. Alabama produced more big-time baseball players in the state union. Big names. Hank Aaron, Willie McCovey, Willie Mays, you can go on and on. Yeah. Kids don't play baseball anymore. And when you ask them, they say it's too hot out there. They stay indoors and play Nintendo and all these games. So they started giving up baseball a long time ago, and now you see it in basketball. But guys like J.R., he was one of the rare ones. Now you see it more and more. Kids of expatriates, they're leaving that part of the world and playing. And I think